Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm covering the first of two episodes that Sissy Spacek guest starred in this case from season 1, The Townie. We had quite the stellar guest cast in this episode. Of course, highlighted by Sissy Spacek, who has gone on to have the most incredible career, so it was such an honor to get to work with her early on in her career. Also in this episode was Nicholas Hammond from The Sound of Music. He was one of the Von Trapp children in that movie with Julie Andrews, and Nicholas was a joy to have on set. Also, playing Sissy's mother, Mrs. Simmons, was Allyn Ann McLerie. Now, you may not be as familiar with her, but she was someone who was a huge part of my childhood because one of my favorite musicals growing up, movie musicals, was Calamity Jane, starring Doris Day as Calamity Jane, and Allyn Ann McLerie was a young singer-dancer who ends up in this small town of Deadwood and creates quite a lot of adventure and drama and whatnot during the movie. So this musical that I had watched over and over, and Allyn Ann McLerie was a triple threat. She sang, she danced, she acted, so I was a huge fan. Sissy Spacek plays Sarah Jane Simmons, who is a rather dominated daughter. Her mother is very strict, worried about her, and has very strict rules for her. John Boy likes her. She likes John Boy. They go to the movies together with the family. All is innocent, but she has been lying to her mother and saying that she is with John Boy doing schoolwork or whatever, when she is actually, in fact, running around town in this LaSalle coupe with Theodore Albert Claypole Jr. Is that his name? Theodore Albert Claypole Jr. And her mother doesn't know this, and John Boy is very upset that she is involving John Boy in her lies. Mostly it seems like Sarah Jane just wants to get out from under her mother's thumb, and she is looking for someone to help her get away. She hopes maybe it'll be John Boy. She likes him. John Boy likes her, but John Boy, she says at one point, "I'd marry you tomorrow if you'd ask me." And John Boy is like, "I am so not ready to be married." And she is then utilizing Ted as a potential means to an end. And Ted, we find out, is actually kind of keeping things from his father. His father is also very strict. And so these two children are just a little lost. And Ted has absconded with his father's car and money and a gun. And he and Sarah Jane are basically eloping. They're running off. They encounter a roadblock. They try to go around it. The car ends up in a ditch. They are both a little bit injured. So none of it works out exactly how they had planned. Fortunately, Sarah Jane realizes that her path needs to alter. And the parents realize that maybe they have helped to drive the children this direction, and perhaps some change in their lives might help. We have a number of sequences that were shot at Franklin Canyon. I recognize them because there is the reservoir that we see, and that was usually indicative of not being on the back lot, the type of water, how big it was, and the type of trees. So those are giveaways for me, whether we are on the back lot or in Franklin Canyon. Jim Bob has come across this baby duck egg, and Grandpa helps convince him that he can hatch this by keeping it under his armpit. So for a little bit, he thinks he's got this big secret, but turns out the whole family actually knows. And then at some point, he does indeed hatch this egg. I have no idea how they did this, if it was kind of an egg that they put back together, or they, sat and waited for this egg to hatch, or whether it was all created with special effects. I don't know. If anybody who's looking at this was involved with the show and remembers how we did it, let me know. In his annoyance, Ted manages to back up over Elizabeth's boat, her little wooden boat, and it punctures the tire on his car, gives him a flat tire, which he's very upset about. And John Boy offers reluctantly to help him change it. He's like, no, I got it. Which then leads to later on when, he's not so good at changing the tire and ultimately does have to get John Boy's help. Little lighting continuity issue here when Sarah is having a long conversation with John Boy about how trapped she feels in her life and how she just wants out, and how different her life is from John Boy, who's happy to be there with his family and she's not. And then she looks out there when she's been talking about Ted, who's ready to run away with her. And you see it looks a little dark there. It looks a little later in the day, like we are nearing dusk, sunset. And yet when they go outside to help with the tire, then it seems earlier in the afternoon. So I believe those were just shot at different times. And the one that was supposed to be earlier was shot later, so the sky looks darker. I like that Grandpa is very protective and puts his foot down when Ted Sr. starts making derogatory remarks about Sarah. And he says they've known her for a long time and she's a lovely girl. So good for Grandpa. Olivia is quite outspoken with both of the parents in telling them that they are, to some degree, responsible for what has happened with their children. If their children felt that they could talk to their parents, if they did not feel so heavily controlled and dominated that they wouldn't feel this need to push back and rebel. So Olivia really kind of lets them have it.
Give it to him, Livy.
It was so clear from even this early part of her career how talented Sissy Spacek is. And it was such an honor to have somebody like that who has gone on to have such a distinguished career to be a guest on our show a couple of times. What a joy to work with someone like that. I don't have a lot of specific recollections about her. I didn't have a lot of scenes with her, but she was very professional. She was right on top of what she was doing all the time and very dedicated. And I thought she really created this character beautifully, and she really had presence, screen presence, magic on screen right from the beginning. And that's what I have for you for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons about the episode The Townie. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. And I will see you on another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons or another segment of Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.